Folks, listen.
Welcome to another episode of D&M, bringing questions for you that we find interesting. We don't know until the other person says, and bring a mystery to the table for all the generations. Two people from two different backgrounds trying to make sound about the world around us. They both bringing light to the questions they ask. Dina and Michael Slidin in your DMs with class. Hey, it's D&M. Hey, it's D&M. D&M. It's D&M. Hey, it's D&M.
Hello everybody and welcome back to episode 3 of Sliding with D&M. So this week I have the cultural topic and Dina has the global topic, so I'm just going to get right in it and start. So this week I wanted to ask you if you have any weird cultural traditions or superstitions. So I can tell you a little bit about where this question comes from. So my parents were born in the Soviet Union, so they have a very heavy Russian influence to what they talk about and what superstitions we have and what traditions we have. So something that I was thinking about is before we travel, every time before we take a big trip, before we leave the house, we always turn off all of our electronics and sit down in the living room together.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't really know why. I know it sounds weird. You're probably a little bit shocked, why do we sit before a trip? But what I always thought about was in my own personal mind, I think it really has to do with spiritual reasons. So the real reason for sitting down is so the spirits don't get angry. But what I always thought about was in the olden days, you would sit down for a little bit of rest before a long voyage, right?
Okay. Yeah, I can totally understand that. But now wait, can I ask you a question though before I answer with
Yeah.
cultural traditions? Okay. So when you sit down together, are you just sitting down and kind of having a moment of silence? Or are you sitting down and having a moment together as a family and discussing what you're going to do on the trip?
No, it's usually, I wouldn't say it's silent. We'll occasionally say something, but we don't discuss anything. Everybody sits for a second. I always stare at the ceiling or the floor or the wall, and you kind of just look around at each other, and then someone will be like, okay, and we'll clap, and then we'll get the trip started. We're okay, that was enough.
Really? So it's it's like a moment of silence. Really?
Kind of, yeah.
How did I not know
I
that about you? I didn't even know that you did that. What?
Yeah, we do that. Yeah.
Okay, and when you say you turn off all the electronics, are we talking about you unplug the can opener? We have an electric can opener? Okay.
No. If the TV's on, we'll turn off the TV. So you turn off the TV, you're not supposed to really be on your phone or anything. You kind of just unplug for a minute. I don't mean you turn off everything hardcore, power everything off.
Oh, okay.
I mean just you don't use your stuff. So you just kind of sit and look at each other before a long trip. And by long trip, I mean getting on a plane and going somewhere, or driving a full day trip somewhere. If we would go to New York, we wouldn't sit for a 3-hour road trip. That doesn't qualify for some reason. But if you're going to the airport and you're going to be on a plane, you need to sit before the trip.
Okay. Wow. I seriously didn't know that you guys did that.
It's a little weird.
I don't think it's weird. I think it's kind of cool because it's that moment of connection. We'll call it a moment of connection that you have prior to, because technology drives our lives so much. So it's taking a moment to kind of disconnect from the television, your phones, or whatever, and having one moment of okay, we're going to do this and we're going to go together. Because when you go on a trip, I mean, if you're like me, you're taking thousands of pictures, documenting every moment. You're on Facebook Live or Instagram or Snapchat, oh, look at this food I'm eating at this really cool restaurant. So I think it's kind of cool, actually, that you guys take a moment and turn everything off and disconnect and kind of have that moment together. I think that's cool. So,
yeah.
Okay, so I guess now on my end, so I don't really know if we have any weird traditions in our culture. I mean, so okay, you're this is gonna okay, now we're
Uh
gonna get
oh. Now you're laughing, so I know it's gonna be like something wild.
okay. So I mean, listen, as you all know, I am African American. So just in general, we have weird things too. I think every culture has weird things. Like for
Hmm.
instance, okay, and this is going to sound totally stereotypical, and I don't know if this happens in every African American household, but I know it happens in ours. Like so you've seen TikToks, and I'm going to reference TikToks where it's like tell me you're African American or black without telling me that you're black. And people are like for leftovers, you use the butter tub, like the Crisco
Yeah.
butter tub, or you do certain things in your household, and that's how people know you're black. And so I think every family has that. Like I know a big thing for our family always growing up, especially on New Year's. My mom was very big about that the first person to enter the house in the new year had to be a male, right?
Hmm.
So if
Okay.
yeah, so if we were to go out on New Year's Eve, now obviously this year, well, no, we did go outside. We went outside and we had those like streamer cannons and we lit off the streamer cannons after
Hmm.
midnight. But the first person to come back in the house had to be a male, which happened to be my husband. He was the first one that walked back in the door. And so
Yeah.
apparently that's one of those things that like brings good bounty and good luck into the new year. So I never understood it. I was like, does it matter who comes in the door first? I'm like, that's kind of
Hmm.
a weird thing. Like, it shouldn't matter. Like, you're walking in the door. But so that's kind of like a weird thing that I always remember, even to this day, when we come in the door first, my husband, like on
So talking about like weird, like actual weird stuff like that you don't understand. So when I was a kid, my mom always had this thing about us whistling in the household. So apparently, like in Russian culture, if you whistle in the household, I'm pretty sure it like ties to finances. So if you whistle, like you're gonna be poor, you're not gonna have any money. So like we weren't really like it was very taboo to whistle in our house.
Oh, okay, okay. So you saying poor just totally triggered another memory. I also remember growing up, um, my mom always used to say, "If you leave your pocketbook on the floor, you're always gonna be poor." And I
Uh
remember the
huh.
one time I left my pocketbook on the floor, and she's like, "Pick that up right now." And I was like, "What? What happened?" And she's like, "Your pocketbook's on the floor." And I'm like, "Why?" She's like, your pocketbook's on the floor. You're always gonna be poor." And I was like, "Okay." So I remember that. I think that every culture has kind of its weird idiosyncrasies. Um,
Yeah.
in life, and that's okay. And I think some of them are kind of things that are just passed down from family to family, like your mom heard it from her mom and her
Yeah.
you know
Totally.
and it just kind of goes
Yeah.
down the line. I'm trying to think of some other weird traditions. Oh, another weird tradition is my mom is always insistent, that we leave the Christmas decorations up for the full 12 days after Christmas. Like, you cannot remove any Christmas decorations until after 12 days.
See,
Now,
it's funny that you say that because my partner's mom, she is very insistent on taking down the Christmas decorations as soon as possible. So she will. This year we made her wait until after New Year's, but the day after New Year's, everything was gone. Like I walked downstairs in the morning,
it
and
was gone.
the tree was gone, everything was gone, and whenever we drive around and people still to this day there's still some people that have lights up and stuff, but
Yeah.
whenever we drive around, like the judgment comes out. She's like, oh, it's January 23rd and these people still have their Christmas lights up. Like that's not good, you know.
No, my mom is completely opposite. And for those that are in my circle of friendships and the people that I know, if you know me well, I am typically not a Christmas person. I celebrate Christmas and there's nothing wrong with it, but I feel it has become a little bit, and I think some people feel this way too, a little bit over commercialized. Like, what are we getting for Christmas and this and that, when it shouldn't be about that. And I've just never been a huge Christmas person. Like, it's just not my favorite holiday. Like, I celebrate it
Hmm.
and I love the spirit of Christmas and being together, but overall, it's just not my favorite holiday. It's not my thing, but I celebrate it. I enjoy it with my family. And but my mom is completely the opposite. She is a huge Christmas person. Like, and if you know me well and you've been to our house, you know that it literally is like Christmas threw up everywhere. Like, there's a tree in the living room, there's a tree in the family room, there's like lights everywhere outside, there's houses all in the dining, like Christmas is it's everywhere. And
Yeah.
so she's very insistent. And I still don't really know to this day why, but you have to leave your Christmas decorations up for the first 12 days after Christmas. So we are
So
about
let me ask you
to take
this:
it down.
what do you think about like passing down those traditions or like superstitions? Because I will say this: so I do sit down before we take a big trip, regardless of if my parents are around or not. That's something that like I adopted myself. So my partner and I actually do it now. Like when we went to the Dominican Republic together, we I made sure to sit down before the trip, and she was a little like thrown off by it, but like now she definitely thinks like it's something like interesting that we do, and it's kind of like our thing, so she's very like about it when we take a trip together. So like what do you think about like passing down those traditions that are like superstitions? Do you think like some of them are necessary, or like each person should pick and choose, or like what do you think about that?
I think you should pick and choose. I think you pick the ones that you connect with the most and that mean the
Hmm.
most to you. I don't think you have to do everything, but you pick those ones and you connect with those ones and you teach your children those ones that you feel are the most important and most beneficial. Um, and that's kind of how I would do it. I mean, I'm not a big I I don't think me personally, and I know this sounds weird, and you know me well, I don't really think of myself as kind of a big person that's into traditions a little bit. I kind of like to think outside the box. And even now thinking about things, I don't really think I've given my kids, and they're older now, like true traditions of things that I felt like we always had to do. Now, and maybe, and I don't know, maybe you could consider this one a tradition. Whenever we go to new places or we go to big cities, I'm a huge fan of get out of the tourist section, go explore, go be in like the roots and the heart of the city. Like the tourist stuff
Hmm.
for me is just, ugh, I just don't want to do it. And so, one of our traditions that we've kind of started as a family that when we go to new places or we travel to new things, we go to restaurants that were either featured on two Food Network shows, Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives, or Man versus Food. And we go eat at those restaurants. And that's kind of so that I guess that's kind of a tradition, but I feel like that
Yeah.
encourages my kids to explore things that are different and outside the norm and outside the box. So but I do think that you can choose which ones you choose to celebrate and kind of make a part of your own. I like the tradition of sitting down and disconnecting. I might have to try that. I might have to steal that one. Um,
Yeah,
just
you could take it from the Russians, we'll let you have it.
thank you, thank you. No, I think it's a good. I think that's a good one because it allows you to disconnect for a moment. Because you know when you're on that trip, you're going to be so connected to your technology because one, you're away,
Hmm.
you're trying to keep in touch and keep up with everyone, and two, you want to document it, you want to document this is where I went, this is what I did, so
Yeah.
when it comes up in your feed later you can say, oh my gosh, I totally remember that trip and we did this and we did that. So I think having that moment of complete disconnection is kind of a good thing. That's a good
Hmm.
tradition, Michael. I didn't know that you
So
did that.
for everyone at home, if you want to try sitting down before your trip, what you do is you get everybody up, everybody gets ready, you pack the car, you make sure everything's in the car, everything is good, and then everybody heads back inside. You sit down in the living room for like, a good like 20 seconds. You look around at each other, nobody really says anything, and then you're like, "Okay, sitting down is over. Let's go." That's how you do it.
And the other thing too is that might be the last moment that you all like each other before you go
Yeah,
on your
before you
trip,
drive each other nuts. Yeah,
right? Before you go on
yeah,
this long trip and you're on the plane and you're doing this. So I would highly suggest that you take that moment to be like, in this moment of disconnection, everybody is happy, everybody like each other before we go crazy. That's
yeah.
I
So
I think it's a good thing.
I don't know. I just always I always remember now, like growing up, whenever we would take trips, that's something that always stood out. And it's weird because like even more so than the trip itself, like that's the memory I have, was like always sitting down.
Yeah, I think that's kind of cool. I think that's cool that you shared that. And like I said, I didn't know that you did that, because
Yeah.
we've gone on trips in our little friend group and I typically drive, but we don't sit down. Like in our little friend group,
Yeah,
we
but
don't
like
sit down
yeah,
and
but a day I feel like a day trip doesn't count. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it has to be a significant journey.
that is true. That is true. And our friend group is trying to plan a significant journey. We were supposed to try to plan
Yes.
one. It has not happened yet because of COVID, but trust me, friends, it will happen. We will all take, there's like five of us, and we will all take that one significant long road trip together, and it will be fantastic and
Yes.
fun. And as long as it involves
So
good food, we're
yes, so we'll make sure to sit down before that trip because that one will definitely count.
okay, that one. So we will incorporate that tradition. And maybe, who knows, maybe we can incorporate the tradition of no matter where we are or what we're doing, we try to all get together like once a year and take a trip together and go do something and go explore because we all are super busy, our little friend group that we have. And we all are kind of in
Yeah.
various stages of our life of doing things, which is all good things. Everybody's doing good things. So I think that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, it would. We'll have to sit down again though, and maybe not keep our pocketbooks on the floor.
Yes. Don't put your pocketbook on the floor, people, because you will always be poor. Always,
Yeah.
always, always. No, that was a good question. That was a very good
Yeah.
question. I enjoyed
Thank
that.
you.
I
Thank you.
I enjoyed that question. It made me laugh, which is good. I don't know if my question is gonna make us laugh. Like we just had a very good, like light-hearted conversation, which was really good. And now we're gonna, you know me. I like to bring the sauce because that's what I do.
See, it seems like every time we have one like hard hitting, like deep thinking question and one that's like a little bit more lighthearted.
Yes. So, but that's okay. That's why we do this podcast and that's the beauty of it. So, are you ready for my question?
I am. Hit me with it.
Okay. So, obviously this week um the face of American politics and the face of government changed so drastically as we inaugurated a new president on Wednesday. And the transition of power went peacefully, which I think was a good thing, a wonderful thing to see. And on the first day, President Biden had 17 new executive orders, ranging from a myriad of things to the stop building of the wall, to stop the building of the pipeline, to giving more kind of support to the DACA, to those, the dreamers, and them being able to stay in the country. So, my question for you is if you were to become president of the United States, what would be some of the first executive orders you would give and sign?
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. So to preface this, I would never become president of the United States because I am a naturalized citizen, so I would never be able to in the first place.
Well, we're just
So
gonna say that you could be. We're just thinking out
hypothetically, we live in an alternate society that is also named America, where naturalized citizens can also become president.
yes.
Okay.
So we're just gonna say
Um,
you could be president. If you could,
all
what would
right.
you do? What would be some of the first things that you would executive orders that you would sign into law to make happen?
I don't know. Um I think it depends on what the situation looks like at the time. Um, if we were in like the exact same situation we are today, as in like we're in COVID times and all that, I would definitely sign executive action on which President Biden did do. He actually did stop the interest rates on federal student loan debt. I think that's super important.
He
Is
also
not
paused
putting.
he also paused payments, I believe, if that's correct. He paused
Yes, yeah,
payments
that is correct.
as well.
Um, so I think that's super important because we're in a situation today where we are trying to save people from being in a riskier financial state than they already are. So I think if you have the power to help people out, and that's what your intentions truly are as president, I think that that is something that is super important, is stopping interest rates on student loan debt and stopping the payments until September, I believe he did, just to give people a chance to get back on their feet during COVID times. I don't know. I don't know what would be my first executive action. I feel like, um, I don't know. It really would depend on the situation for me. I think I'm leaning towards something about healthcare. Um, but the issue with a lot of executive actions are that you they can get stricken down in the court very easily because a lot of executive actions have to go through Congress first. So you can make an executive order, but then Congress can petition it to the courts, and the courts can strike down your executive action. So it's really like a risky play to do executive actions. Um, but I feel like mine would have something to do with healthcare and just bettering people's healthcare, because that's something that I think isn't talked about enough, is the amount of Americans who are underinsured or do not have insurance. And it's scary to think about that you could walk out in the street and something may happen which may not be your fault, right? Like I could walk out in the street tomorrow
Uh-huh.
and get hit by a car, and if I'm underinsured or don't have insurance, I could go into a couple $100,000 of medical loan debt, right? So that's where my mind automatically goes, but I'm not positive. What about you?
So I think one of the first things that I would do, I agree with you on the healthcare. And I say this, there was a period of time um early in my marriage that my husband and I, when we were married, that yes, he was working a job and I was at home taking care of our children, right? And that was a choice that we made together as a family because we had realized that if I were to go out and get a full-time job, my salary would basically be paying for daycare. Like it wouldn't be
Yeah.
beneficial to our family as a whole. So we made the sacrifice that I would stay home and work, which was fine, but we had pretty much the bare minimum of healthcare, right?
Hmm.
Because we were a family, so much came out of his check. So we did the bare minimum. Our deductibles were crazy high, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we basically took the bare minimum. And so you're right, if something were to unfortunately happen to him or I, we would have been in so much medical debt, it would have been insane, and
Yeah.
thankfully nothing like that happened. So I think that would be one of my first main focuses. Um, I think mental health care would probably be another main focus of mine,
Hmm.
just because I think a lot of the issues that people have, and I don't even want to say mental health care, I want to say mental or overall wellness. I think wellness is more encompassing than just saying
Hmm.
focusing on mental health care. But I think a big aspect of how we treat our bodies, right, comes
Yeah.
from having good mental health. And especially right now during this pandemic time, like mental health is so important. And people, it's been proven statistically that the suicide rate has gone up. Like people's mental health is just not good. And it's going to turn around. I truly believe that. But where we are today, it's just not a good state. We as humans
Yeah.
are naturally drawn to each other. We want to interact with each other. And right now we can't. Or we can. We just have to, like I said earlier in one of our earlier podcasts, we have to live smarter. We have to think smarter. So, yes, we can still gather, but in smaller groups, wearing our mask, socially distance, living smarter, right? It's not a restriction. It's for this moment right now. We live smarter so we can get to the other side of where we need to be. I
Hmm.
think another executive order or action that I would take is, and I've had several discussions with you about this before, is definitely in education. I'm glad to see that he paused the payments. Um,
Hmm.
I am a true believer, and I work in education, my job, what I do every day. I think that education in a higher degree is not for everyone at this moment in their life or wherever they are. I'm not saying you shouldn't go get it. I'm saying you have to evaluate where you are in that moment and say, is this the right thing for me right now? Because you see so many that are 18, 19, right? They go away to college, they get there, and they're like, whoa, what am I doing? This is not for me, right? Yet
Yeah.
here they are, and then they drop out of college, okay? Because they realize after a year and a half, that's not what they want to do. And then here they are. Now they are basically sacked with $40,000 worth of debt. And that's on the low
Hmm.
end. Like that's talking
Oh yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
that's like the low end,
Yeah.
right? Because we
I
work.
mean, I can add context to the student loan issue right now. I mean, I happened to look a couple days ago. Sadly, I checked how much student loan debt I'm in. I'm in my second semester of my sophomore year at a fairly well-known school, and I am about $50,000 in debt in 2 years. So I'm on track to hit about $100,000 by the end of my 4 year degree.
And that's the crazy thing, Michael. We are asking 18 and 19-year-olds to accrue 90,000 worth not like $90,000 worth of debt. That's the price of almost like a small affordable townhouse. Do you know what I
I know,
mean?
but I think the issue is that it's really ingrained in high school and in like society. Just everybody expects you to go to college, right? You're expected to go to university or college and get a degree. Otherwise, you're not really important in society. And most jobs that people dream about doing, I've never really heard of anybody whose dream is to become a like blue collar job, right? I've never heard anybody dream about becoming an electrician or dream about becoming a plumber. People always dream about becoming doctors or important business people, right? And for all of those jobs, even in the introduction, like entry level jobs, you need some sort of 4 year degree. It's just blown out of proportion to the point where you really can't do anything that makes you happy unless you get that 4 year degree.
Which is sad. It's sad that that's the mindset of people. I have always told my children, I have, like, I have one that is in college right now, and I have one that is a junior in high school. And I have always said to them, I say, listen, I don't care what you do. I just want you to be a productive person. So if that means you take a year off and you work and you be productive, that way, that's fine. I don't care if you go to a community college and you go that route, or I don't care if you go to a 4 year university, but you have to figure out how you're going to be productive. And that is what you want to do. Because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, you're spending that's your money. It's not free anymore. Like school isn't free, you know?
Hmm.
So, and really, I mean, school really isn't free. Even with, like public education, when you're growing up, people are paying taxes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, school's really
Yeah.
not free, but it's not on your dime. It's on
Hmm.
taxpayers' dime. And now, when you go to a university or community college, it's on your dime. And so, I think that we have to find a better way. I think that we should be encouraging those students to, you know, for where they're at that moment when they're looking at schools, like you have to be realistic. Like you have to encourage them. And I think as parents, and I know that I'm not like every parent, but I think we as parents, we have to meet our kids where they're at. So like you can't just push, oh, you need to go to college. Oh, you need to go to college. Like if that's
Yeah.
not where your child is at, you have to meet them there. And then you say, okay, college is not for you right now. And I think my husband's the prime example of that. He went to community college for like a year after he came home from his mission. And then he didn't go to school. He didn't go back to school until he was in his late 30s to get his degree. But that's where he was at that moment, you know?
Hmm.
And he went back, got his degree, and now he has a decent job, which is fine, and everything is good. But I think he realized where he was in his 20s that school was not for him in that moment, and that's okay. But
Yeah.
you still have to be some type of productive citizen. So I think it's a good thing that President Biden signed that order to pause the payments. And, especially we're in a pandemic, like you said, and we're trying to figure out, you know, how are we going to pay for things? There's people that can't even put food on their table right now. Just
Hmm.
they can't survive the basics, let alone try to pay for a school loan, which is sometimes more than half their paycheck. I mean, and
Yeah.
you're right. It's like you said, you come out of school with a 4-year degree making an entry level wage, yet now you've got to pay this student loan, and you're making an entry level wage. You barely have enough food to pay the loan, your school loan, rent, food, and
Yeah.
maybe, and let's be honest, like a cell phone these days, it's almost kind of one of those like necessary bills. Does that make
Oh, it definitely is. I would say
like
that it's essential for anything, just because you can't do anything without one, right? You go to
yeah,
the doctor's office and they say, "Okay, what's your phone number?" You go and you apply for some sort of aid, or you go apply for a loan of some sort, right? They always ask, "What's your phone number? How can we reach you?"
yeah.
Right?
And I mean, I mean, I know that here we still do have a landline, but a lot of my friends, they don't have landlines anymore. There's why I have
I don't think yeah, we had one maybe like 10 years ago, and we haven't had one since we all got
so
phones.
our
So,
cell phones are so, and I think even more so in the last 10 to maybe 15 years, our cell phone has become so second nature that it's almost a part of what we do and who we are every day. I mean,
mhm,
I didn't have a cell phone for the longest time. Like when I was in my 20s, I was like, I don't need a cell phone because at that point you just use them to call and maybe text if you could had one of the fancier ones that could text, right? The old
yeah,
school Motorola flip phone and you'd have to hit the number like 20 times to
mhm,
get to the right letter.
yeah,
I'm sure. Okay.
yeah.
Did you ever have a phone like that? Be honest.
No, I did. I did. I remember I think I was too young to realize how to actually text with it. But I did. I remember, yes, I do remember having to click one a bunch of times just to get a C, right?
Right. Just to get a see you later, right?
Yeah.
And
And people would like, and that's where all the shortcuts come from. Like you would hit for R, and then you'd hit space, and then you'd hit U,
yeah,
and then you'd hit OK, right? Like that's how people would text,
yeah,
because it was so inconvenient to like spell things out. And you also had minutes, and
yeah.
you had like the character text messages, so you had to like cut things short to like fit it all in, right?
Yeah, no, no. So I think that we need to reevaluate how we look at education. And I know that's a big thing that's coming up and what they're going to do. And I hope we figure out a better way. I hope we figure out a better way to encourage students that are getting ready to graduate that you attempt to be productive citizens wherever you're at in that moment. And if a 4-year university is where you're at and that's what you want, go for it. If you are like I 2 years college, community college, go for it. Or like,
Yeah,
listen, I need to work for a year. I need to work for a year and a half. I mean, I'll be honest, I when my oldest was deciding what he was gonna do, and he wound up actually doing 2 years of community college and he then transferred to a 4-year university. I really was hoping that he would take a year off and travel because he
yeah,
was so young, and I was like, "Now's your time. Go travel, go see the world, go do things." And I was like, "And if you need some
hmm,
help, I will gladly help finance that for you." You know what I mean?
yeah,
I really wanted him to do
yeah,
that, but he made the choice that he wanted to go to a 4-year university, and in that time, he has traveled. He has gone and done things and gone places, and kudos to him. And he was in the process of planning a big trip overseas, and unfortunately COVID kind of derailed that, at least postponed it at least for another
yeah. I
year.
was I was gonna say it's a good thing that he didn't decide to go travel. Otherwise, he would have been stuck, God
Right.
knows where,
He would
right?
have been over somewhere. So yeah, so I think I think some of the orders that President Biden has signed, I think will be beneficial, but it's like I do agree with you though, it's you have to there's a process too. And so we'll see how they play out. We'll see if they
Hmm.
remain in place. I can only
Yeah.
hope. But I think those are some of the things that I probably would do. I would focus on healthcare for sure. Um, and particularly mental health and making sure that everyone's mental health and overall wellness are taken care of, because I think if those
Hmm.
things are addressed, everything else will fall into place. Like when people have good mental health, they are such a different person than when they don't. And then the
Yeah.
other thing I think would be definitely addressing the secondary, post secondary education. Like, how do we make this more affordable for those that do want to go? Like you are going
Hmm.
to, but like you said, you just looked and you're like, I'm a sophomore in my second semester and I'm now $50,000 in debt and I still have 2 years to go.
Yeah.
And that boggles my mind that we are asking young kids to basically come out with debt that amounts to a small mortgage payment, you
Yeah.
know? Like that.
I mean, it really does say, you can say what you want about Joe Biden, but it does say a lot about his character that he truly is looking, he has the students back right now, right? What that executive action does is I don't really benefit from it because my loans are all deferred for another 2 years and 6 months anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I don't really benefit from the stopping of payments right now. But what he is doing is all those kids who just graduated or are just about to graduate, he is giving them a little bit of time to be able and to go out there, right, and find some sort of job or find a job that fits within their career field. Or even if it doesn't, find a job doing something that they will eventually be able to pay those bills. The issue with his executive action is that it only covers federal student loans, right?
Yeah,
There's
it
nothing he
doesn't
can
cover
really do
private.
about, yeah, there's nothing he can really do about private student loans. So the majority of my loans are private loans. I have about $40,000 worth of private loans. So I'm not really benefiting too much from his executive order. But at the end of the day, I'll take it. I mean, I think that it truly says a lot about him that he's actually there for the people and not himself, right?
Yeah. So, and by the way, let me just be a disclaimer. Like I said, I I think education is important. I work in education every day. I just think that it's important that we meet students where they're at in that moment.
Yeah,
So, if it means, I'm not saying you shouldn't go to college. No, that's totally not what I'm saying. You meet your
yeah,
child where they're at. So, if college is the right decision for them, then you support that decision. But if they come to you and say, "Listen, college is I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's where I want to be," then you say, okay, what can you do to be a productive citizen? And I'm also a big fan of, listen, if you really don't know what you want to do, go to a community college, take your general education credits, because
yeah. That way you can figure out if because a community college really is like a 4 year university. In most cases, I would say that it may be slightly easier or slightly less concentrated than what your child may want to actually major in or study in a 4 year school. But it gives you an opportunity to do a trial run at a way cheaper price. And if you don't end up liking it, it's way easier to back out from a community college financially than it is from a 4 year accredited university.
yes,
Right?
and a lot of times too, at least I know in where we live at, um, the community colleges work directly with those state universities and institutions. So
Yeah.
if you do decide to transfer, your credits will transfer. You say, I'm looking to concentrate and focus in this. Okay, you need to take these classes. So when you decide to go to a 4 year university, they will transfer. So that's kind of like my big plug. Meet your child or your student where they're at and support them where they're at, because if they don't go to college today, it's okay. They just need to be productive. But hopefully, in the future down the line, they will go back to school. And if they decide to go back to school and go to college where they're at, if they're in their 20s or if it's like my husband in their 30s, that's where they're at. And that's where they'll get the most out of college, right?
Hmm.
That's when
Yeah.
you'll get the most out of it, when you're ready to go. So, okay, well, that was my question.
Thank you. That was actually pretty interesting. I've never thought about what executive orders I would sign. I've definitely thought about like bills that I would sign if they pass through Congress, but I've never thought about executive actions. So
Well,
thank you for that.
well, you're
Interesting
welcome.
question.
Well, and he signed so many. Like, I mean, you've all seen them.
Yeah.
He signed a
Yeah.
lot on the first day. So I think
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see, like you said, how they play out and if they stay, or, what gets challenged in court through due process. But I think
Hmm.
it's just, if you had the power as president, like, what would you do? What would you choose?
Yeah.
I mean, by signing your name, you are like etching that power in there, right? So, like, how would
Yeah.
you choose to, like, use this newfound power that you have been granted by the Constitution of the United States? Like, what would you do with it? So, anyway, that was my question.
Yeah. That was super interesting.
So, all right. Well, until next week I have the culture question and you have the
Yeah. And I'll have the global.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll have the global. So I'll be interested to see what you bring next week. These dialogues are really fun because, like, we've talked about before, they're unscripted and it kind of lets us kind of bring our thoughts to the table, not knowing what the other one is going to ask. And it's not like we can call or text and say, this is what I'm going to talk about, because that would, defeat the beauty of this. But I think, oh, wait, hold on. Remember, we're going to do something different for next week. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so next week
yeah, go
we are going to ask some audience members to submit some questions, and maybe we'll have a poll of some sort. Maybe we'll just choose our favorites, and we will definitely switch it up for next week. So next week is not going to be our original thoughts. They're going to be polled questions from audience members, one cultural topic and one global topic.
yeah, so that'll definitely be new and exciting, and we'll kind of take on those questions of people that, hopefully you're listening and streaming, and see what you guys would like us to talk about and discuss um, during our podcast time. But anyway, so on that note, I am Dina,
And I am Michael.
and this was Sliding with D and M, and we'll catch you on the flip side next week. Until later.